Hey everybody, happy Thursday. It is we've got about 7 minutes before we get started at about 6 o'clock. You guys know I like to pop in here just a little bit early and do a sound check and video and all that type of stuff. If you guys would do me the typical favor, give me a thumbs up and let me know that we're coming through live and clear. Trooper Spirit, hello sir. Greetings from the US. Thanks for jumping in, my friend. I appreciate your membership too. Got a lot of guys in here with us. Leland Berg, thank you, sir. Neil D, thank you for the thumbs up there. Guys, I'm going to ask for a little bit of your patience today, if you don't mind. I've got a bit of a heavy heart. It's the second anniversary of the passing of a very dear friend and mentor. He was a great in the motorcycle business, no question. If you saw my post on Facebook or something, you may have seen it, but the fellow's name was Bob Pkwy. And I'd like to ask a favor. When we're done with this, if you guys will take just a couple of minutes, go on Google, look for Bob Pkwy out of Canada and Pkwy's Cycle Creations. He was a great in the motorcycle industry because he was Canadian. Not a lot of people heard of his name, but he was one of those few people that that would build a bike from paint to driveline, engine, transmission, frame fabrication, and everything. He was truly a craftsman. So take a couple of minutes and look up Bob's stuff. So I miss him dearly. So hang in there with me on that if you don't mind, guys. So I've got a few things I want to cover before we get started here in 5 minutes, because I know everybody's going to want to jump in and rock and roll. First thing I want to show you over my shoulder here, this clock. One of our viewers handmade that for me. It was a very gracious gift, and it was an absolute surprise. And his name's J.R. Rothman, and I want to say a big thanks to J.R. for taking the time to make that for me. I actually posted a link in the description where he put up a video of him making that here on YouTube. So a big thanks to J.R. It means a great deal. I hung it here so everybody can see it, and the rest of the time it's hanging up on the wall, here in my office. So that's fantastic. Rest in peace, Bob. Thank you, Flathead. I appreciate that, sir. I want to say thanks to a lot of our new channel members that have joined. Of course, if you guys aren't members, I'm sure some of the members here will speak for it. I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff for our members, and actually seeing machine work and how we do heads and stuff. But I want to give a shout out to those guys: Anthony Conrad, Charles Higgs, Del Pepe, Gary Savoy, Gene Reynolds, aka Yoda, Greg Brown, Jack Wagon, Joel Shurock, hope I pronounced that right, John Etchells, John Johnson, Ken Martin, Rudolph Underwood, I believe, Todd Malchosi, hope I pronounced that right, and Warwick Norris is still with us. Thanks a million, guys, for supporting the channel. We greatly appreciate that. I do have a couple of announcements. Of course, you guys remember the all kids bike thing that we did. You guys played a part in it. If you remember, we launched that fundraiser when we did the live with Brian Clock. You guys donated, you bought shirts, you asked your friends to buy shirts, and we pulled all that money, and you donated during the chat, and Brian matched those donations, and I matched those donations. So we are the first all-kids bike program in Georgia. It's 25 bicycles going into a local school with a whole curriculum to get kindergartners and second graders on bicycles. The hope, one, you get them physically fit, better shape, outdoor activities, all of that. But the hope is if we can get kids on bicycles, get them on two wheels now, then they'll be on two wheels when they get older. We got to help this industry somehow, right? And hopefully if we can catch them young enough, we can get them excited about it. So, Dennis, hey man, from Delaware, thanks for jumping in. Jim Brandy, thank you, sir. I appreciate the kind words. So for the all kids deal, on March 20th, I know this is short notice, we're going to have a build party here at the shop. Law Tigers is going to cater it. We're going to have some great Southern barbecue, so a big thanks to Law Tigers for helping to sponsor the event. It is on March 20th, on Saturday, from 11 to 2 here at the shop. We're going to have these 25 bikes, and we're going to ask all of you guys, if you want to be part of something special, to come in and grab some tools on a lift and kind of help us put these bikes together. We're going to be simulcasting the event across YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And what we're doing with that, there's a link in the description. If you would like to come to the event, you can purchase a ticket. We're asking for a minimum $25 donation per ticket. 100% of that donation is going right back into the program for us to hopefully sponsor the second school program in Georgia. So if you're interested, I had to limit it to 100 tickets. I believe we have about 60 tickets left. If you would like to come to it again, March 20th from 11 to 2 here at the shop, and we're going to feed you, and we're going to have live music, and we're just going to have a great time. So if you're interested in that, again, there's a link in the description that'll take you to the Baxter's Garage website. You can get a ticket for that. Thank you if you would like to come, and thanks to everybody that donated. That's awesome. Another thing we're doing right now, we are right this close to hitting 2 million views on this channel, and we're almost at 30,000 subscribers. You guys have helped a lot with this. I mean, it's all, I do this for you guys. We have a lot of fun doing it, but you sharing this stuff and telling your friends about it and everything, we've seen a lot of growth in the channel over this time, and it's been awesome and fantastic. So anyway, I have a goal. I would like to hit 2 million views and 30,000 subscribers by the end of this month. All right, now, and we're doing a contest for this. So I'm giving away as a first prize an S&S cam plate and oil pump for a twin cam or M8. The second place, we are giving away, what am I doing on the second place? I forgot what I'm doing for second place. We're giving away a Baker attitude adjuster. And for third place, you can pick anything up off of our Teespring store. All right, so what you have to do is you got to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and share that post on Facebook, tag 3 of your friends. And then we're going to do a live deal, and we're going to give it away at the end of the month here on live, that cam plate, oil pump, attitude adjuster, and some form of apparel of your choosing. So, little contest. One last announcement that I have before we dive into the tech stuff. I'm super elated and excited about this new program. So I put up a question on the page, on our community tab a couple of weeks ago, I have so many questions from people asking about what tools they need to buy to do the things that we do. So they see us doing certain things, cam installs, cam bearings, we've done transmission stuff. What transmission tools do I need? All this type of stuff. Well, I've had a good relationship with Jim's Machine and Tool for a very, very long time. They make the best tools in the business, right? So we've decided to start, I want to actually start loading 2 videos a week, but we're going to start doing on a regular basis Tool Tech Tuesdays. And it's a bit of a partnership with Jim's, and the idea is for me to show you guys how to do, each mechanical change or modification to a bike, be it installing cams, be it in installing, wheel bearings or neck bearings, and changing fork oils, all those type of things. And most of those tasks do require special tools. So the idea is that we're going to start this series, Tool Tech Tuesday. I'm going to show you how to do each one of those tasks. I'm going to show you the tools that you need to do it and the proper care and maintenance of those tools so they'll last you a lifetime. So I'm pretty excited to do that. I mean, and it's a lot of it is a review, and Jim mentioned tool review is a good call. Yeah, it's a review as well. So it's kind of an unboxing and everything else. So you guys get to see everything about what it takes to do that type of thing. And it seems like you like the when I put the camera on my head, and see my perspective. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to open the boxes, the tools, and show you how to do all that stuff. So I think you guys may enjoy that. Josh DeFranco, thanks, buddy. Appreciate you. What's up, y'all? Okay, guys. I'm going to give you the option. I think we got about 100 viewers right now. We can do this a couple of different ways. The tagline for this video was Sumping, and what causes sumping and all of that stuff. That's about a 10 or 15 minute diatribe from me on the sumping issue. And the other thing I committed to do was going through the 10 commonly asked questions that I get on the channel, and the other was to open it up for you guys and you ask your questions. So I'm going to ask, where do you guys want to start? Where do we want to start? 10 common questions? Do we want to talk about sumping for 15 minutes, or do we want to answer your questions? Stephen Richardson, I know nothing about sumping. Yeah, you do. You got it bad, man. You got it bad. Joe, settled in an Old Forester and rye. I'm having a sip of some straight weight right here, some SAE 30, which I might get a kick out of that. All right. I tell you what, since that's the title of the video and a lot of people are probably here to see it, how about we start with the M8 sumping issues? All right. Let's start with that. Sumping. Yeah, sump away. Okay, guys, here's the deal. Let me give you a little bit of history. I have been browsing the internet. I have been all over the place. Everything from the Milwaukee 8 Problems and Concerns forums on Facebook. I think I just hit my mic. Sorry about that. And I mean, there's all these Facebook groups and internet folks and everything else, people talking about sumping. And then it seems there's a lot of confusion about what it really is, what causes it. So I'm going to give you guys a history. Let's get down to brass tacks with this whole deal. All right. First off, let's go back to the 1960s. And any of you guys that are hot rod guys will remember in the 60s and before, pretty much every vehicle on the road, the engine was vented to atmosphere. The crankcase was vented to atmosphere through the valve covers. Okay, they just had breathers on top of them. And if any of you remember, one of the biggest problem during the 60s was oil consumption. And that's where the habit came from of, you'd pull into a service station and they would check your oil every time you filled up your tank. You can't get full service gas stations anymore, unfortunately. But that was the thing. And people knew that you needed to you needed to check your oil on a regular basis because consumption was a big problem. So let's think of how they combated that. The first emissions control device to be put on a vehicle was a PCV valve. Positive crankcase ventilation is what it stands for. And it's this little weighted valve, and that would typically connect to manifold vacuum. All right, so the purpose of that was so that it would put the crankcase in a vacuum environment. All right. What they discovered was by putting the crankcase in a vacuum environment, it actually helped the lower piston ring seal better. All right, because it would create that pressure and almost suck the piston out. Okay. And that to a large degree, and I'm sure I've got car guys in here that will remember this stuff, just to confirm for everybody else watching what I'm telling you, that when they started putting PCV valves on cars, then the oil consumption problem was drastically reduced. Okay? So what you were doing to a large degree was negative crankcase pressure to help the rings seal better. Leland says, I remember it well. Okay, now let's fast forward and let's see how that applies to Harleys. If you owned a shovel head, pan head, Evo, twin cam, or M8, it doesn't really matter. All of those engines sumped, and let me explain. Any bike that had the oil tank higher than the oil pump. Okay, so like I said, think way back. All right, I'm sure all of you have experienced it. If you own an Evo, Evo, shovel, pan, any of those bikes, if they sit for a while, the oil in the tank would actually not really bypass the pump, but leak through the check valve in the pump and fill up the engine crankcase. Even modern day Sportsters. All right, so that's why they tell you if you have a Softail or a Sportster, you always need to check the oil with the engine hot. Because I've seen people do it too many times. They'll check it when it's cold, it looks low. They put oil into the tank, they crank it up, all that oil was sumped into the bottom of the crankcase, and then that oil would suddenly get pumped back into the oil tank and it blows the oil out everywhere. Okay, so sumping really isn't anything new as far as oil filling the crankcase. All right, and Trooper Spirit happened on old British bikes too, sumping on Triumphs and all this stuff. Guys, this is not anything new. This is kind of the same sort of thing that I see. There seems to be a resurgence on cam chain tensioner issues, the spring-loaded ones from 99 to 06. We're seeing it again only because people are dragging those bikes out of barns and suddenly realizing, oh crap, we need to do this. This stuff isn't anything new, okay? So anyway, let's talk Evos did the same thing. One of the things that was great about Evos is it had more of a controlled breather system on it, where it actually had it was timed to the crank. It actually had a little breather gear and a, in there that acted almost as the PCV valve. Okay, so and Evos were great, but they were also much smaller displacement engines. And when you look at pistons from Evos and shovels, particularly, you'll notice that they have very thick oil rings and very thick compression rings on it, like 3 millimeter and bigger oil ring packs and really, really thick compression ring packs. Okay, and those engines also ran lower compression ratios. All right, so on an Evo, having a 9.5 to 10-to-1 compression, Evo is a lot. All right, well, they're not as compression sensitive as twin cams were. Well, that's even more so with the M8s. With a 4-valve head, they're very efficient. So you can run higher compression ratios, 10-8, 11, 11-2-to-1, even on 93-octane fuel. Okay, so let's look at the transition again from Evo, lower compression ratio, twin cam compression ratio got higher, strokes also got longer, displacement went up. Now let's look at M8. The breather system is not that much different. The cam plate and oil pump, like I've demonstrated to you guys, and how everything works, is not that different as it was with twin cam. But yet the displacement has gotten bigger, right? Displacement is bigger, and they're turning more RPMs than the Evo did. They're turning more RPMs faster than the Evo did. And so you have higher, all of those things that are, working against it. So that's the transition. And just to demonstrate to you guys, sumping really isn't anything new, right? But it seems to be the biggest problem with the M8. Now, for guys that were around back in the early twin cam days, we were building 4 and 5/8 stroke twin cams from the very beginning, very early on, 120, 124 cubic inch stuff way back then. Those engines would sump as well. You had to do things to vent the crankcase. Okay, you had to. I was making vented dipsticks, and I wasn't the only one. Vented dipsticks for twin cams back in the day because the oil caps weren't threaded; they just pushed in. Well, if you had a little bit of blow by, high compression, high RPM, it would spit the dipstick straight out of the oil pan on the FL models, or on the Dyna models too. So it wasn't anything new then. And then we got creative and started doing things. I actually discovered a PCV valve that you could lay sideways. It was a metric application. I think it was a Nissan 4-cylinder or something like that. And what I did was drill and tap into the rocker boxes and put with an 1/8-inch pipe thread, and then thread that PCV valve into the rocker box. And that solved my issues entirely. Okay, so now let's move into the M8s. Now, okay, here we go. I'm sorry. Let me get something to drink. All right. We know the M8s have a higher compression ratio. Okay, we know, again, everything that we've talked about leading up to this point. The thing we have to consider, the differences between the M8 and the twin cam, you've got some extra components that are in there. One of those components being the balancer. We have to think of what's really happening. There are two causes that can create what I would say sumping. All right, we have an inefficient oil pump, inefficient cam plate, that's one. Second, we have blow-by past the piston rings. All right, blow-by through the ring, building up crankcase pressure. That will cause sumping. The next thing that can cause it is over-lubrication of the cylinder. All right, now most of the people that are having sumping problems, it's not people that are just riding around, in fairly low RPMs for a short period of time. It's folks that are 2,500, 3,000 RPM and up for 45 minutes to an hour. That's when the sumping starts, really starting to build up, okay? When that sumping builds up, if you look at the belly on an M8 case versus one of a twin cam, there's not quite as much volume there in the base of the M8 case. So what happens when you get only about 4 to 6 ounces in the bottom of the case, it hits the crank. All right, now that wasn't as big of a deal on the twin cam because that was the only component in there that was touching the oil. When you get into the M8s, you have the balancer gear. All right, so what happens is just a little bit of oil gets in there. Several things are going on. A little bit of oil gets up in there, and that gear on the balancer starts picking up that oil as well. And it's slinging the oil everywhere inside the engine case. That oil it's compounding, doing a couple of things. One, it's aerating the oil that's in the crankcase, right? And it's frothing that oil up. That's why when you go on a long ride like that and you pull your dipstick out, have a look at it, you can look down there at the oil and see bubbles in it, right? It's because that balancer is just frothing that oil up. The other thing it does, and the reason you're seeing so much oil and carbon buildup on top of the pistons through the intake track and stuff like that, is because it's the bottom side of the cylinders are also getting over lubricated. So that oil is splashing up onto the cylinder walls, and then you've got the rings that kind of skip over the oil. It's just over lubricating them. All right. And then that oil works its way past the rings onto the pistons. The rings just can't keep up. So then when you start using piston rings that are smaller than the Evo, narrower oil packs, lower tension rings themselves, they can't wipe the oil as efficiently or effectively as the older stuff does. All right? Is everybody following me so far? I know I'm throwing a ton of information at you, right? So, yeah, cavitation. Daryl Dempsey. That's the magic science word. It's cavitating the oil, right? So it's over lubricating the cylinders, pushing that oil on top and everything else. Now, here's an interesting conundrum, okay? Let's look, and the reason I mentioned this stuff about the 60s, we already know that the crankcase being in a vacuum environment does a couple of different things. It reduces the cavitation. If it's in a vacuum environment, it's harder for fluids to absorb air and bubble. That's why if you take a fluid that has air bubbles all in it and you put a vacuum on it, it'll suck the bubbles out of that fluid, right? So by keeping it in a vacuum environment, that helps that issue. The second things, we already know past emissions history from the 60s that if you put the crankcase in a vacuum environment, that it helps the rings seal better. Okay, this is a no-brainer. This is engine 101 stuff. All right, so we're in an interesting conundrum with the M8s because the engine displacements have gotten huge. The cam plates and oil pumps are becoming even more and more, trying to get more and more efficient, but it's hard for a pump to deal with the cavitation issue. It can't maintain suction over a period of time. So I'm in an interesting place with this dilemma. I like the idea of venting the heads. You've seen several people are doing that. They're taking the heads and they're venting it to atmosphere, okay, bypassing the intake and dropping the hose down. Well, on one side of that, that's good because if you have blow-by and sumping issues, that prevents that over lubrication on the cylinder wall and the oil that gets around it and all that stuff from being sucked back into the intake, right? That's a good thing. However, you're also removing the engine's ability to put the crankcase into a vacuum environment, which helps seal the rings. Okay? Everybody understand where I'm at there? So that's one of the downsides to venting at the breather, okay, is you're removing that vacuum ability. It's okay because you still have the umbrella valve or PCV valve to prevent it, from sucking air back in, but you're also not pulling a vacuum on it, right? Well, the other issue with running a vented dipstick is the fact that you're venting it. You're releasing that vacuum, right? So it's basically almost turning it into a free breather. So I'm saying that there's pros and cons with doing it either way. It seems like one is a trade-off for the other, and you kind of have to do them both or do none. But doing one doesn't help the other. And it's, I'm going to say, unfortunately, I don't have the solution yet. But I am working on something. I need someone that's local, or you can be far away if you want to bring me your bike. I need a bike that's sumping badly. And I want to do some testing on this bike. It's not going to cost you anything, but what I need is an M8 that's sumping badly. And I believe I have a true solution that won't compromise putting the crankcase in a vacuum environment, and also won't turn it into a free breather. And it's kind of a combination of all things. So I think I may have an actual solution for this. But what I will tell you for now, wink wink, if we split the cases on an M8, we balance the crank and pull the balancers. Or balancer. I would not pull the balancer on a Softail because that engine is a rigid mounted engine. When you pull both balancers out of the Softail M8s on a rigid mounted engine, there's a lot of harmonic vibration done. We've been doing independent testing on that for quite a while, and what we discovered was that it was a little too much vibration. And I feel like over while it was kind of an immediate solution to the sumping issue, I feel like over time that it would create other issues. Harmonic vibration is terrible in any mechanical device, so it create issues with crank bearings, cam bearing, ring seal, stuff like that. So for the single balancer motors, rubber mounted, we pull the balancer and balance the crank if we split a case. And the only other solution that's there is upgraded cam plate, oil pump, and vented dipstick. And I probably would not vent the breathers just because I want to try to maintain some kind of vacuum in that crankcase for all those reasons that I mentioned. Does anybody have any questions on the sumping thing? And what I'd like to do, if you guys don't mind, let's see, what time is it? It's only 6:20. I see that we got a ton of comments on here, and of course, guys, I'm going to get to your comments. What I would like to do, if you don't mind, y'all want to go through the 10 commonly asked questions that I get. We can blaze through that, and then I'm going to open it up to everybody's questions, and we can talk. And if you have any comments or questions too on the sumping thing, then let me know what you think there. So let's get another sip of some SAE 30. Just to close that subject up, DC Spins asked, you say hold off on bending the breather. I would say I'm going to recommend yes. You almost have to make a decision or make a call on your particular bike. If after venting the dipstick, if you are seeing a tremendous amount of blow-by through the breather, then it's kind of a band-aid to vent it to atmosphere to keep from a ton of carbon buildup on top of the pistons. But I would only do that as a last-ditch effort, because when you vent the crank, when you vent that to atmosphere, again, you're removing the engine's ability to try to maintain a negative pressure inside the crankcase, which is one of the reasons why they vent it to the intake. So that's that. All right, guys, let's go to the 10 most commonly asked questions. The first one, best parts to buy on a limited budget, biggest problems and best solutions to prevent issues. And that was a question I get from a ton of people. What's the first thing that I should buy to make sure that I don't have any problems with the bike? That really can kind of be a tough question to answer, because there were common issues with different year models, and they varied from one year model to the next. There were year models like 2007 and 2008 were notorious for bad cranks. They were notorious for bad compensators. They had some transmission issues. 2006 was a phenomenal year. 2010 was a really good year. 7, 8, and 9 had issues with the connector at the throttle body and the ECM. It just really varies. On the M8s, 2017, early 18 was a big problem with cylinders breaking, the problem with, cam plates and oil pumps, all that type of stuff. That's a tough one to answer. So what I would say, the best thing to do is to have your bike checked out tire to tire. Especially if it's an ABS bike, flush and fill your brake system every 2 years, change fork oil 20,000 miles, check, do an engine alignment on the early frames, check your motor mounts, all of that type of stuff. Make sure it's mechanically sound first, and then do all your upgrades later. Jeff Engel asked, tire pressures, cold or hot, why does the tire pressure change so much? That's an easy answer. You look at the recommended tire pressure from the manufacturers intended to fill the tire when it's cold. And there's no question, different brands will change more than others. You can fill the exact same size tire, be it across Metzler, Michelin, Dunlop, Shinko, you name it. And when those suckers get hot, they could be 4 to 5, as much as 4 to 5 pounds difference from one manufacturer to the other. And a lot of that has to do with how the tire is made, the number of belts, reinforcements, all that type of stuff. So that's the reason. That's what you do. Check it when it's cold, and whatever it is when it gets hot, the manufacturer is aware. So just run with that. What's the best cam? And that's number 3. What's the best cam? There is no best cam. The best cam is the best cam for you, your bike, and your riding style. That's the honest answer. People will toss around that they make the best cam, or you'll see on message boards and forums, this is the best cam you could have for your 110 and all this stuff. And guys, it just simply isn't true. If there was one company or one person that made the best cam, they would be the only cam that people would buy. So how you choose your cam is talk to a responsible engine builder that truly understands cam dynamics. And if you ask somebody, what's the best cam for me, and they give you the cam, there's nothing wrong with asking them why. Ask them what the numbers mean, and ask them to compare a couple of different cams and explain to you why one cam is better than the other. If the cam's been recommended to you, they should be able to explain to you why they recommended it. If they didn't, ask somebody else. Was that mean? I hope that wasn't mean. Robert Faust, you're correct. Cams are one of the most misunderstood things in the engine building world, no question. What's the best tuning system? Also on number 3, and then this one, what's the best tuning system? Check through our video library. I've done one video a while back on how to choose the perfect cam. I think I did one like a year and a half ago that was on tuning systems, the basics, EFI basics. And here's the reality on tuning systems, guys. I don't care what tuning system you hand me, I can tune the bike. All right? It doesn't matter who makes it. If it's TTS, if it's Direct Link, if it's Power Vision, it doesn't matter. All right? So the things you have to think about when you're choosing a tuning system is, first off, the guy that's going to be doing your tuning, how familiar he is with the system that he's recommending. Okay? All too often I see people say, well, I had a TTS Master Tune and I put on a Power Vision. Man, my bike runs so much better. Well, he just wasted his money. The reality is, if you're in that same product category, if you're comparing a flash tuning system, that would be in one category, a piggyback system would be in a second category, and then your ECM replacement would be a third category. Each of the systems in each of those categories fundamentally do the exact same thing. There might be a couple of little bells and whistles, but often those little bells and whistles are not significant enough to make a difference for 99.9% of the people out there that ride motorcycles. Okay? So don't get confused, guys. Don't think that your bike will run better on say a Power Vision than it will a TTS. Because they both basically do the same thing. They adjust fuel, they adjust timing. They both have very similar capabilities. Yes, one has more bells and whistles than the other. One may be a little easier to use than the other. But if you put in the exact same parameters for fuel and ignition timing with one as you do the other, the bike will run exactly the same. There's no difference. They're both doing the same thing. So don't get caught up in that. So my advice on that, what's the best tuning system? First, find a tuner that's qualified, that you trust, that it knows how to tune the type of build that you have. Typically, whatever tuning system he recommends is going to be the one he's most familiar with. That's probably the one that you should go with. Okay? There's nothing wrong with asking why. People always ask me, how do I know if the guy that's tuning my bike or doing this, how do I know if if I'm getting the right information. You need to ask him why. If he says power vision, tell him why. And if people ask me, I typically do use a power vision. This isn't a plug for power vision. There's one specific reason I use power vision, and that's because it's the most commonly known tuning system that seems to be out there today. So a lot of our customers, most of our customers, come from out of state and out of country. So I recommend a power vision to him in the event he ever had a problem. He's more likely to find someone that knows a power vision than he does something else, right? So that's generally why I recommend it. Bring me a TTS, bring me an old race tuner, bring me the Kent Moore race tuner, super tuner, whatever. I'll make them run the same. It doesn't matter to me. But I hope that answers everybody's question there on that one. Next, engine noise and ticks, causes and solutions. Whew, man, oh man. All the way back to 99 when it came out, the illustrious twin cam tick, everybody looking for ticks. There's been a lot of products come and go. This one will solve the tick. This one will solve the tick. Sometimes it did. Sometimes it didn't. Here's the reality on that. If you buy a product that stopped the tick in the engine, that means that was what's causing the tick in your engine. All right? There is no solution that caused the ticks. Guys, ticks can come from a lot of different places. All right? And if you go back and you watch our build videos, then you'll notice all of the things that we check, the tolerances, everything from crank bearings to lifter to bore clearances, how closely you align the rocker boxes, how thick your push rods are, what the axial play is in your rocker arm, the axial play to the rocker arm support. Man, there's so many different things. Running an oil viscosity that's too thick, piston slap, ring chatter. It could be valve stem protrusion, the type of springs you're running. There's so many things in there. And the truth is, if you straddled the engine in your car and drove it down the road, you'd be surprised how many ticks that engines make. The point is don't get necessarily sucked into a product that promises to solve ticks. If that product solved the tick in your engine, that just means that product, that component of your engine was worn, and this product repaired that particular item. It doesn't mean that product is always going to solve your ticks. Hope that makes sense. All right, straight to the point, guys, right? That's why we're here. Okay, M8, this is the big one, the M8 with the shavings. You remember that, the factory defect thing? I think that video's got over 200,000 views on it. There were 2 comments that I saw on a regular basis that came through. Well, actually 3. Who paid to fix it? People wanting to see the rebuild. Let's see. Parts wanting to see the rebuild, and how amazed people were that the engine lasted that long with all of that stuff in it. Right? Those were the 3 things that I saw. So first off, who paid to fix it? Well, we're not completely done fixing the thing now, but he did have a extended warranty on it. He didn't have our extended warranty program on it through Altrella, which if you're not familiar with that, I'm going to do a little plug for that. It's an awesome program. Check out the video on that warranty program, guys. If you're interested in extended warranties and performance upgrades at the same time, that's something to look at. He had a factory-endorsed warranty on it. I ain't gonna lie, boys. I spent 10, 12 hours of my time arguing, screaming, yelling, being an advocate for my customer, raising more than you could possibly imagine to get this thing covered. And send an inspector out here. I mean, it was off the charts. And here is this man who had a bike, made the noise since new, and it was a 2017, 0 modifications, completely stock bike, and the crap that I had to go through to get that covered. It was, So anyway, he's a great customer, and I wanted to do my part to help him out and make sure it was covered. So that being said, extended warranty finally did pay for it. And so we are in the process of putting that engine back together now, and it will be a video. You'll get to see what we do on that one, and he's going to be very happy when he gets done. The last thing people asked is how great it was that it lasted that long with all the metal in it. I actually see the opposite of that. To me, I'm shocked that the oil pump wasn't good enough to pick that stuff up and cram it through the rest of the engine. That, to me, is the big problem. I would have expected the engine to grenade. What should have happened with all that debris in the cam chest is that pump was good enough to suck every bit of that stuff up in there and distribute it through the whole engine, and that didn't happen. So to me, it's bad. That's it. How much does a Skunk Works build cost? That's almost like asking how high is high. All right. The beauty of the Skunk Works engine program is custom tailoring an engine to a person's budget, giving them the best bang they can for their dollar, power output expectation. It's that custom tailored suit. For me to just tell you how much a Skunk Works build costs is impossible for me to do until we have a serious conversation, a consultation. I want to know you, your riding style, and all that type of stuff. And then we design the engine around. Money's hard to make these days, guys. So what we try to do is fit, your needs and expectations with the budget. Sometimes we can do that. Sometimes we can't. But we can at least do it in stages. So that's a very good question. The next one, what engine oil is best and why? Man, that's a debate. I'm just going to tell you, guys, I use AMSOIL. That's not an endorsement for AMSOIL. It's as a result of me building engines for 30 years, right? I've always had very good luck with it. I've never had any issues. And anytime we do oil analysis and send oil out for testing, and I look at its lifespan and all that stuff, no, I've not tried every single oil on the planet. I've seen a lot of engines in with different oils in them. That's just my personal choice. If you want to know more about that, check out the oil video that I did on all about engine oils, and it'll explain all kind of stuff and give you an unbiased perspective on engine oils. What exhaust is best for an M8? An interesting thing, when M8s came around, I had exhaust manufacturers reaching out to me, wanting to know that, or asking the question, what are they doing wrong on their exhaust? They design an exhaust system, they put it on the bike, and they'll lose horsepower and gain a little bit of torque, or they'll gain a little bit of torque and lose some horsepower, and they're chasing 3 or 4 horse in torque, which is negligible. Nobody even knows the difference. It's kind of funny. So the reality with an M8, if you'll notice, guys, and I want thumbs up on this if you don't mind, throw me a comment. I promise I'm going to go through all these comments here shortly. And you guys are going to confirm this, I know. Let's go back to twin cams. When dynos really started becoming a thing and everybody chasing a number on a dyno for whatever that's worth, all exhaust manufacturers and air cleaner manufacturers would sell their exhaust based off dyno sheet numbers. Can I get a high five? Everybody remember that? Actually, I just covered up my clock from JR there. Everybody remember that, right? That's what everybody did, because you could, unless you have 160 plus. Amen to that, Paul. Everybody remembers that, right? It was every exhaust manufacturer was, here's our dyno sheet. You'll gain 10, 15 horse and torque by putting our exhaust on, putting our air cleaner on. Now, for those of you that own an M8, do you see exhaust manufacturers selling their exhaust based simply on the dyno sheet with no other modifications? Can I get a thumbs up on that too? You notice that you don't see exhaust manufacturers saying, if you just buy our pipes and our high flow and do nothing else, you're going to gain 10 horsepower, right? You don't see it. That's because it doesn't happen. All right. The M8s are actually pretty efficient engines as they are out of the box. So exhaust modification and high flow, if you're doing a stage 1, you really can't expect to gain any power at all. You might even give up a little bit of horsepower and gain a little bit of torque, or the opposite of the two. So it's when you put exhaust or a high flow air cleaner on your M8, think that you're doing it for really 2 reasons. To improve engine life, because you're going to cool the engine down a little bit, and for the sound. That's what it comes down to. Pick the pipe that you like the look and the sound of best. That's the pipe that you choose to put on your M8. Because there is no magic formula pipe out there, is reality. You may gain a few points here, there, and a few places that may not even be able to be repeated from one dyno to the next. Okay? That's just the truth of it, guys. All right? So when you start changing, modifying the engine, that's when the magic starts happening. When you do a cam change with the right exhaust, that's when you start seeing significant number changes. All right. Then when you start doing headwork and compression increases, that's when that M8 really starts to shine. You know, our build, like the build we're doing for Steven. Steven's in here. I don't know if Gerald is in here or not, but you know, we're doing a build for Steven and Gerald and a couple others and stuff. So I mean, their builds are going to be over 150 horse and torque, and they're going to be able to ride them anywhere, California, whatever, 93 octane tour long life motor, 150 horse and torque. I mean, that's pretty insane. And you know, for those two bikes, then you know we're going to be using 2-in-1 pipes on those because that's perfect for the build. Doesn't mean that that's the perfect pipe. It just means it's the perfect pipe for the build, right? So anyway, there's a lot of companies that make good 2-in-1s out there. I mean, the D&D Billet Cat is a fantastic one. Two Brothers makes a good one. Let's see. Actually, the Reinhardt 2-in-1 is pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of companies that make good ones out there. So it's picking the right pipe for the build, right? And that also plays into what cam you're running. You know, how the bike's going to be ridden and the weight of the bike. Exhaust plays a factor in all of that stuff. So all that matters. And the last top 10, this is perfect timing. We're at 6:40, guys. What is my favorite engine? The M8, the twin cam, or the Evo? The 426 Hemi with a 1071 blower and a 2.4 EFI intake on it. That's probably my favorite engine, but no, in reality, each one has their place. All right, each one of those engines were just fantastic engines. You know, the Evo is pretty much timeless. They were great engines. They lasted and last and last. I've actually been surprised at how bad an Evo can be and still run. I'm shocked every time. I had one come in here the other day. I literally had to beat the valves out of it with a hammer because the valves had seized up so much in the guides. Yet that bike was ridden in here and just wanted a top-end refresh on it. And I had to beat it out with a hammer. Crazy. I've seen them run with holes in the pistons, broken piston skirts. Just incredible. But they were lower compression, smaller displacement engines, right? So that's one thing. I like the twin cam because parts are less expensive for the twin cam. They're just as easy to work on as the M8, and they were really good platforms. You know, you take all the things into consideration. You can do a lot of different build variances with the twin cam. And the M8 I like because you can get more power out of them without pushing it as much as you had to the twin cam. So, man, it's really hard for me to say my favorite one. I'd almost have to say my favorite engine is the one that I built yesterday. Tomorrow's favorite engine will be the one that I built today. You know, that sounds crazy. We just try to do something better every time. So that's the top 10 list. All right, let's dive into some questions. Let me take a drink here first. All right. Let me get my computer mouse working here. Oh, and by the way, you know, we're dealing with the small town thing here. And if something happens, the connection drops, don't go anywhere. I've got the system set up to where it'll kind of store me talking, and then it'll pop back up. So as long as it doesn't drop the signal for more than about 30 seconds, then we'll have a backup. All right, we're not done yet, guys. Let's get to your questions. Let me get my mouse working here. Let's scroll back to the top. Good grief, guys. All right, so the other thing that we're going to do is I'm going to say the last 5 to 10 minutes of this. I think we'll run till 7 unless the questions keep pouring in. So what I want to do is I'm going to say the last 10 minutes. If you guys remember, I did a question speed round. It was basically ask me questions as fast as you can answer them, and I'm going to answer them as fast as I can answer them. I had a lot of fun doing that. So we'll give that a shot. So let's go. Let's pick some questions here, guys. Bear with me a second. Let's see. JC Cycles, I have an 88. Question is, do you think it's a viable option to hard my engine to make it last? Do you think it's worth the money? That really depends on you, man. The 88 cubic inch, you know, they're great engines. They're great. The twin cam, they're great formats. If it's a budgetary question, you don't think the bike's worth it, do what address the safety items first. Fully inspect the bike. Check the items for wear. Cam plate, oil pump, tensioner, stuff like that. Do a leak down cylinder pressure test. If it's healthy, ride the heck out of it, man. If it's not, fix what's broke. Let's see. I remember sumping and 4 pumps. Finally, now no issue. Chris, glad you got it taken care of. Let's see. Upgraded my TC88 to 124, 142 horse, 150 torque with dyno papers to prove it. And JJ, those are good numbers. Yeah, absolutely attainable. Not a problem there. Let's see. Steven, Pete hooked me up with an air cleaner for my B Antique. Excellent. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Let's see. Greg, I know I'll be taking my RKS to when I'm ready to do my 124 build. Greg, thank you very much for that, sir. We'll look forward to seeing you there. Let's see. Let's get to the questions. Questions. Working through here, guys. Several questions in here. Are the vented oil dipsticks worth the money? I'm going to say, considering the issue, yes, it's an easy fix to help aid in the sumping problem. So yeah, it's worth the money. Yes, as long as the engine's not too bad. Let's see. Vented dipstick. Oil changed under warranty. Questions. I love my Evo. I think everybody that owns an Evo typically does. There's another vented dipstick question. That's the reason why we talk sumping issues, right? Everybody wants to know about the vented dipsticks. I do still need, I'm going to open this up to anybody. If you've got an M8 with sumping problems, I need your motorcycle. I need to borrow it for 2 or 3 weeks. So it ain't going to cost you anything. I just need one that's sumping real bad. So, and the engine's in good shape. So if you have one, shoot me an email, kevin@protwin.com. All right, let's see what we have here. Let's see. Sorry, guys. Man, we got some pretty good questions in here. Paul Horvath asks, if you get one with good tolerances and break in properly, should be okay, as in my case, nil shavings on my magnets. Yeah, a lot of it has to come proper break in. I will give you a bit of advice. When you go in to buy a new bike, right, you got to remember, if you go to look at a new bike and that bike's got a handful of miles on it and it's a bike that's been parked outside, all right, a lot of times dealers will crank those bikes up, pull them from the parking lot to the inside, shut them off. In the morning, they'll crank them up, pull them outside, shut them off. And they do that over and over and over again. You got to remember, on a cold start, you get this enormous blast of fuel to get the bike running. The other issue is the bike never gets to full operating temperature, which means it's more likely to condensate inside the engine case. So if you're buying a new bike, try to buy a new bike that they haven't pulled it in and out a whole bunch, or you're buying one right off the crate. I know it's hard to know when to do that, but that's a good way to know that your engine break-in is going to be a little better. Now, there's no question that engines, when they come out of the factory, they test fire every one and they do all of that. But, man, that's anyway. Try to get one as fresh as you can. All right, let's see. Question. Is there, from the Road Glide Rider, question, is there a way to add passenger headset plug to models not on the Limited? I had a 2009 Road Glide, added the headset plug for the rider passenger. Is there any way to add a headset for the passenger? That's a good question, man. I'm thinking about that. I can't think of a way, you'd have to buy all the factory harnesses and then all of that other type of stuff. If you want to do something like that, I would probably just get like a Scala rider or something like that, a Bluetooth option from one headset from one helmet to the other. That might be your best bet on that. That's probably the way I would go to that. Let's see. How about venting at the head with an inline C PCV valve? That comes from one of our members, Daryl Dempsey. You're basically duplicating, when you do that, Daryl, you're duplicating the PCV system. So you already have one PCV valve in the head. Adding a second one is really just kind of duplicating it. There really wouldn't be any advantage to doing that. There's already one there. Gary, Indiana, another one of our members. Will 2006 Evo have sumping issues? That's funny. A 2006 twin cam will. Unless you're talking a Sportster, but yeah, they can have sumping issues when they sit for a while. Bob Maslin, do HD engines have PCV systems like auto motors? If so, is there a fresh air intake, vented dipsticks, head vents, exhale only, check valves? Does that leave blow by inside? Is it harmful? Thanks. Yes, they do have crank breathers, is what a lot of people call them. But yes, they have a PCV system built into the head, and they are designed to exhale only. Sometimes they can the little breather valves, especially on twin cams, can harden over time, and they don't work quite as well as they should. And one quick way that you can test that is to remove your air cleaner. You got the 2 ports on the head. You can do the same thing on an M8. You got the 2 breather ports on the head. You can put a hose in the hole and then just put your mouth on the hole and blow in it and suck on it, boys. And of course, what should happen is you should not be able to blow in it. And then when you suck on it, you'll get a nice big lung full of oil vapor fumes. There you go. That's for those of us that used to siphon gas out of cars with a garden hose, right? Let's see, Paul, your Chevy idle's nice. Can a fuel-injected twin cam be idling at 800? The oil indicator does not turn on battery, gets enough voltage, too much load on bearings. Any other issues? Could I ride my TC124 at 800 RPM? Great question, Paul. Back about, close to almost 20 years ago, I was working with an ECM manufacturer, and we were designing ECM specifically for a company in Japan that built, big twins and twin cams and stuff like that. So I programmed firmware in an ECM, and it had to be an ECM replacement type deal, to be able to idle the bikes down as low as 650 RPM on a twin cam. They like it over there in Japan. They like that lope. The problem that I found was oil circulation. So in order to do that, to keep the oil temperatures down and everything just kind of working the way it should, yeah, you could idle it at 650 and the bike would sit there and idle forever and not overheat. But we did end up replacing cam plates and oil pumps, putting high volume pumps in them, and also high pressure springs that would keep the oil circulation good enough, right, to keep the lifters pumped up and everything healthy. We've got to remember that, on the early twin cams, they were primarily volume oil based, not pressure oil based, because you had mechanical bearings everywhere. It's not like, modern car engines and stuff that have Babbitt bearings. When you have mechanical bearings, you just need oil volume. You don't need oil pressure. So in reality, that's why shovels and all the bikes then with no oil pressure would idle and live just fine, because they only needed enough oil pressure to keep the lifters pumped up. Everything else is just bathed in oil because it's a mechanical bearing. So that being said, I wouldn't trust the light. What I would do is put a mechanical oil pressure gauge on it just to test it at 800 RPM. If you're making more than about 8 to 10 PSI, then you'd probably be good to go to idle it at 800, and it shouldn't beat it up too much. Let's see. Next question. Do I say holding off venting on the breather? Yeah, if you can, unless it's something real bad and blowing oil like crazy into the intake. Good question, DC. All right. Michael Jones, one of our channel members, has pork chops on the grill. I'm on my way, my friend. Well, I'm on my way in 10 minutes. All right, let's see. 93 Evo. Nick Hildebride, 93 Evo. Need to replace shifter shaft, difficulty of job, and amount of special tools needed. It's not really tough. You got to be able to take your primary apart. You need the big nut, the big socket to take your crank nut off and all that type of stuff. And you might have, I believe in a 93, you had a tapered main shaft on your transmission to clutch basket in 93, I believe. So you would need a puller for that. So yeah, there's a couple of specialty tools you would need to do that. And it can be a little tough. Not too bad. Let's see what else we got. External breather. Man, this sumping thing is quite an issue. Gary, Indiana, on an Evo, can I put a vacuum gauge on a dipstick to check vacuum in the crankcase? Yes, sir. And actually, you know what, Gary? If you do that, would you call me and let me know what that number is? Let me know if it pulses. and what it pulses to. I've never done that. I would be curious to see what it is on an Evo. If you do that, I would love to know. Thank you. TCB82, another member, venting breather on a TC88, same opinion as an M8. Exact same opinion there, bud. Venting to atmosphere versus all that. Vented dipstick. Joe, for the money we're talking, that ain't mean at all. No, sir, it's not. You're right. Let's see. Carrie Lewis. That's a good way to look at it, Carrie. I read years ago, cams shape power. I've never heard anybody say it that way before, and that is absolutely correct, man. Thanks for. I'm gonna use that. They do. They shape power. It's really amazing. That's a neat way to look at it. Thanks for that, bud. Mark Feeney. The best cam has the best markup for the shop. that applies to everything, right? Let's see. Jim Laurie, another channel member here. Thundermax. Thundermax has its place, just like the rest of them. So does the Twin Tech system. They each have their place. They have pros. They have cons. I would say for most people, if you have access to a good tuner, you don't have to spend the amount of money a Thundermax costs for a relatively basic build. Nor do you have to have a Thundermax for a really big build. I mean, I've tuned 200, 250 horsepower Pro Charger stuff on very, very basic tuning systems that didn't require an ECM replacement. So it depends on where you live, how good your tuner is, what he likes to work with, your ability to do it yourself, that sort of thing. Robert Faust, just put in a downloaded map and it's tuned, baby. Tuning by email. I love it. No, I don't. That's not good. I don't do that. I've had a lot of people over the years call me and offer to buy my library of maps. And I won't do it. I don't agree with it. Let's see. Ernest Knight, 103 Softail, 4,000 miles. Considering decatting. I don't want loud. Shop flash or tuner to reach an AFR to cool engine, mostly country roads and 2-lane riding. Thanks for all your info. Ernest, that's a very good question. There's absolutely nothing wrong with decatting the head pipe. All right? You could expect by decatting that you may lose a little bit of low to mid-range torque depending on the muffler you have. All right? One of the big reasons I recommend decatting is that allows you to tune the bike a little bit richer, which will help it run cooler. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is trying to tune a bike a full range tune with the cat still in it. We have to think of how you cool the bikes down. You retard ignition timing a little bit, you give it a little bit more fuel. All right? You give it more fuel, if you got a catalytic converter in it, catalytic converter is going to do its job. Sees more fuel in the exhaust, it's going to get hotter and actually burn hotter, make the exhaust hotter. All right? So if you want to tune the bike and your goal is to tune it, to kind of cool it down a little bit, by all means, you can leave a stock muffler on there if you want to keep it quiet. You can decat it. That will give you the ability to tune the bike, cool it down a little bit. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that at all. Let's see. Headset plug. Man, let's see. Mountain Dew 01 S&S Evo 88 Harley motor 590 cam 10.2 to 1 piston question mark. It's hard for me to say, man. I don't know what's done with the heads. 10.2 on an Evo. Make sure the ignition's tuned right. You need a programmable ignition on that. That's kind of a high compression for an Evo, depending on where you live, your altitude, octane fuel. So make sure you've got a solid programmable ignition that'll allow full range on that. Paul Horvath mentions too many barrel injectors have 20 plus minus flow rate alone. Paul, you are exactly correct on that, sir. You can take two injectors off the same bike, and I've done it, flow test them, as much as a 20% variance from one to the other. And that's why not only that, but other manufacturing tolerances with different sensors and things like that. But it doesn't quite work as well as people think. So let's see. Let me scan through here real quick. Jim, Mark Feeney mentions straight pipes. Yeah, I think you're tapping on that. Straight pipes can be kind of tough to tune. especially fuel injected stuff. They need some baffles in there to help with the reversion and scavenging for sure. Jim Vell, another channel member, that's my question. Ticking. I think we covered that one, Jim. It's if something's ticking, then there's mechanical clearance that isn't right. It's just a matter of tearing it down and finding which one that is, checking a piece at a time. I understand, guys, when you watch my build videos and you watch my teardown videos, you'll notice I'm very, very methodical with how I tear an engine down. 9 times out of 10, when I tear that engine down and I make my notes, I pick up the phone and call the customer and say, hey, just wanted to ask you, was the engine doing this and this and this? And they confirm, yes, it was doing all of those things. So often the teardown is as important as the build to help me solve problems that the customer had that he failed to mention to me. So we take as long to tear one down sometimes as we do to build one in some cases. That's important. And ticking is a big part of that. Straight pipes, bad for a stockish M8? Yes. You need to run something with baffles, man. The louvered baffle, spiral pattern, the longer the baffle, the smaller the pipe itself is going to help you have more low to mid-range torque. I would not run a straight pipe on any fuel-injected bike, to be honest. Let's see. Let's keep going. Stephen Richardson's. Hey, Stephen, you used our little skunk icon there, buddy. Thank you very much. Engines, our Skunk Works engines are worth every penny. Yes, sir, I like to think they are. We take a great deal of pride in our engines. Let's see what else we have. ExxonMobil, if anyone wants to know about oil. Let's see. We got a lot of thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Two brothers, too big for stock. Breather. Okay, now we're getting into some more questions, guys. Flying. Well, let's see. Let's back up a little bit. Josh DeFranco, what about pure gas? Is it worth headaches of trying to keep only ethanol-free gas in an engine? That's a great question, Josh. I'm kind of anal retentive about that. You know, for my classic cars and lawnmowers and stuff like that, I keep 30 gallons of ethanol-free fuel at my house. And I put it in I've got a little mobile caddy. I'm pretty anal about that. So here's my advice I would say. If you know that whatever that engine is, if it's going to be setting up for more than about 30 days, you need to fill it up with ethanol-free gas. If you're going to be running it on a regular basis, you can run 10% ethanol, and it's not that big of a deal. The biggest thing is when they sit for longer than 30 days. All right? So that would be my advice. If maybe keep a few gallons of ethanol free laying around, go for that last ride or cut your grass for the last time, get it on empty, fill it up, run it for a few more minutes to get the non-ethanol into the system, and then you can store it. That would be my advice. Let's see. Two shot glasses. Let's see. John Etchells here. Let's see. John Etchells. Oh, wait. Street Bob. Roughly 2 shot glasses of oil in the crank. 510 to year drive, 70,000 miles. Is the 2 shot glasses of oil a red flag? Not at all. Not at all. I believe a shot glass is about 2 ounces. So that's 4 ounces of oil. That's not a big deal at all. No problem at all. Let's see, Paul Jensen, one of our members, looking through Harley's K&N air filters. I can see a fair amount of light holes. Is this normal for most high-flow filters, or should they be woven tighter, filter quality versus airflow? Yeah, Paul, I get, the big thing about K&Ns is, this is going to, it's opinion, man. I know there's a bunch of testing going on with these things. The reality is you got to keep them soaked with oil and let the oil filter. Then I wonder how much the oil impedes the flow, right? So it's... I don't know. I'm kind of old school. I feel like if I can see through it, then particulate's going to get past it. That's just, really my take on it. That's one of the things we can't get sucked into marketing, right? And because you can almost make test results say whatever you want them to say, right? So to a large degree, I'm not going to say K&N makes bad filters. If you buy a K&N filter, make sure you oil the thing on a regular basis. I guess let's leave it at that. Let's see. Free running NJs. Is there one air intake better than another for M8? Not really that I've found, sir, to be honest. I've run a ton of different ones. And the other thing, I try to save our customers money. What I do is I ask you to spend money where it really counts. And then if I can save you money because something really doesn't make that much of a difference, then I tell you that too. One of the best economically priced high flow air cleaners out there is like the Arlen Ness Big Sucker for the M8. I think it's like 160, 170 bucks. It's a nice back plate. You keep your football cover on it or whatever. And the thing just works great, and that's the thing. You can run one air intake and you could do dyno pull one day, do a dyno pull the next day. You can see 2 or 3 horsepower and torque difference. I mean, it varies like that. So, in my opinion, no, there's not really one that's better than the other. If you get into one that's like a true cold air intake, the snorkels that come out or flare out that can actually suck cold air on a consistent basis, yeah, those are going to be a little bit better. Is the price difference worth it? Sometimes the difference in power output is almost negligible, is the truth of it. So, personal preference and budget sort of thing, I would say. Let's see. Eric Thede, I get this question a lot too. Eric, that's a good. Do rocker lockers quieten up the top end? Yes, rocker lockers will quieten the top end, provided the rocker arm shaft, rocker arm axial play is the cause of your tick. So if that's where the tick's coming from, sure, because it keeps the shafts from turning and it keeps the, it just solid, makes everything solid up there. So if your rockers have some wear, or your aluminum rocker supports have some wear on them, or the rocker shafts have some wear and they're not fitting really tight in the rocker support, yes, they'll quieten it up, as long as that's the cause of the tick. There's a lot of ticks that can happen inside of an engine for a lot of different reasons. And guys, as you know, man, I don't pull my punches, man. I'm as honest as I can be, right? If I don't know, I'll tell you. If I do, I'm not going to hand you with a bunch of marketing bullcrap either. Let's see. Steve Helton, I have a 120R with 2 thousandths run out on the crank. I guess I need a crank. No, sir, you don't. If you've only got 2 thousandths, there's really nothing wrong with that. Run with it. No problem. I would check total indicated run out, though. Check on the sprocket shaft side, too, and make sure everything's okay there. But at 2,000, no big deal. Nick Hildebrittle asked for our website. We've got 2 websites. We're in the middle of actually loading parts onto a new website that we're building that's going to have all kind of interactive stuff on it. So I don't have a lot of parts on it yet. Actually, I don't think I have very many at all. But we have one website that's our old website at protwin.com. And then there's a link in the description. And then we have our new website we're transitioning to, which is baxtersgarage.com. You'll see that one there. John Witt, 80-inch stock Evo jet starting point for 5,000 altitude. You could start on a stock Evo. Let's say a 40. I'm assuming you're running a stock CV carb, which is a great carb for running at altitude, by the way. You probably start with a 45, maybe a 46 idle. For your main, maybe a 180 to a 170 to a 180, maybe about right. I would not recommend drilling the slide. I would not recommend putting a Thunder Slide kit in it. I would not recommend cutting the spring for your slide diaphragm. Leave that sucker unmodified and just jet it. And especially at that altitude, I think you'll be good to go. Jim Walsh, thanks. Jump away, sir. Thanks for joining us. Let's see. Carter Nolte, would you recommend replacing spring cam tensioners with aftermarket spring tensioners for someone on a tight budget? Absolutely, sir. The fact is, money is hard to make these days, my friend. It's hard to enjoy riding if you're spending your entire wad just trying to ride. If your spring tensioners are worn, polish that chain. Get some Jeweler's Rouge. Polish the edges of your timing chains. Slap some new spring tensioners in there. Check your crank run out while you're in there, and put that sucker back together and enjoy the ride, man. Absolutely, go for it, Carter. Thanks. That's a great question. Thanks for asking. Let's see. Josh DeFranco, thank you, sir. You are welcome, sir. Let's see if we have anything else. All right, guys. Let's see. It is 7:07. I say, how many viewers we got? I don't know how many people we've had pop in and out for this thing. I appreciate you guys hanging out for this long. All right, here we go. I'm going to say until 7:15. Let's do the speed round. 7:15, we're going to go nonstop for 8 minutes. And I'm going to answer questions as fast as you guys can fire them off. And I'm willing to bet I can answer the questions quicker than you can fire them off. Everybody, button your seatbelts. Let's go. Because at 7:15, I'm going to go home and have some supper and think about my friend Bob McKay. Because I'm tired. All right. Here we go. Joe Exotic. I love the name. Is mayonnaise an instrument? Yes, sir, it is if you spread it on a violin. Do you know where the horsepower will stop on an M8? 300 plus horsepower. I'm guessing 10.5 to 11 to 1 compression. We put about 12 pounds of boost on that. We should easily see 350 to 375 horsepower. Working on it. Still here, been changing shocks, brake pads on my stream. Thank you, Dewey. Keep working so you can get that bike here. 2002 carbureted Road King, Vance & Hines slip-ons, best bang for the buck investment. Absolutely, man, roll with it. Actually, if they're the Vance & Hines classic slip-ons, the ones that are just the slash cut classic basics, those were great pipes. I used a lot of those on bikes back in the day. That's a good choice. JJ Proc, Borzilla versus Thunderheader for a 124 twin cam. I'm going to say... Man, you're asking my personal opinion. It's a long reason for the answer. I would actually go with a Borzilla myself on that. Probably more than likely a Borzilla with a quiet baffle or a wrapped louvered baffle. That would be my choice. Derek Farrell, 2001 Dyna Lowrider, 88-inch twin cam, high flow air cleaner, Screaming Eagle 2-in-1 Pro Pipe with custom Reinhardt baffle and SE203 cam. Want to know what size main jet you would start with? I would say a 180 to a 185. I would also suggest that you pull the carb, you pull the needle, find a needle for a 2006 Sportster, and put a 20 or 30 thousandth shim under the needle. That'll probably work best for you. Borzilla, that one came through again. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? SpongeBob SquarePants. That's awesome. All right, man, we can't be doing this stuff. That's hilarious. All right, here we go. 2014 103 twin cam on a Softail. Any known issues with that mill? No, sir. 2014 was actually a pretty good year. There's no problem specifically that come to mind for me on a regular basis on that one. That was CAN bus electronics. They had things, sorted out pretty good on that one. So nothing crazy that I can think of. Mike Donner, how much horsepower and torque can you add to a twin cam before I have to upgrade the clutch and compensator? I would probably, it depends on the year. If you're talking 2007 and up twin cam, I would look at the compensator pretty much if it were completely stock. On a 2006 and back early style compensator, I would say you're good on that one up to 150, 160 plus horse and torque, easy on a stock compensator on the 06 and back. On the clutch, anything over 100 foot-pounds of torque, I would look at changing the clutch. Greg Mass, I bought a 2007 Road King Special 107, 5,000 miles. Am I riding a ticking time bomb? There was a saying back in 2017, sir. People were curious about if they were going to have cylinder issues with the cylinder skirts breaking, cylinder spigots breaking. And the joke was among the dealerships, they tell the customer, if the bike made it 1,500 miles, you're probably okay. That's a true story, guys. I'm not lying on that. It's not a joke. I would say there were some issues with the 17s. There was sumping, oil pump, cam plate, cylinder spigots, ticking time bomb, hard to say. We got to remember, they made 300-something thousand motorcycles that year. Not every one of them broke. You might be perfectly fine. All right. Gary, Indiana, Evo, no spark only when the battery is low. Issue? Yes, it could be. Depending on the ignition that you're running, if you're running a Twin Tech nose cone, the 1005, that ignition it'll fire on as little as about 6.5 to 7 volts, if I remember correctly. Some of the CompuFires and the Dynatechs and some of the others need about 8 to 8.5 volts while cranking to fire. So check your cranking voltage while it's firing. Or excuse me, your cranking voltage while you're cranking and it's turning over. And you may just have to buy a larger cold cranking amp battery to solve that issue, but that gives you a best idea. Nick, 2002 Road King best carb improvement, jetting and tune, buddy. That's pretty much it. Jetting and tune that bad boy. Screaming Eagle push rods versus Smith Brothers for high RPM. Which one would you recommend, Paul? I don't know how high of an RPM you're talking. Are we talking titanium push rods? Are we, how crazy are we getting with this thing? Smith Brothers makes some nice push rods. Andrew's chromoly push rods are really nice. I've run those in high RPM stuff. I've even, I've run aluminum push rods in some engines. So I would say if you're building a straight up race engine, talk to the guys at Smith and have them do a custom set of push rods for you. You're going to pay out the nose for them, but if you're racing, then you know what stuff costs. Car Moses, yeah, man, I'm all about it. How much horsepower torque can a stock M8 compensator and clutch handle when I do upgrade? The clutch I have found somewhere in that 120 horse and torque range is when that clutch starts to slip a little bit, Joe. It depends on how aggressive you ride. 120, 130 horse and torque. If you're kind of an aggressive rider, the clutch just can't handle it. The compensator, I would almost say 130 to 140 horse and torque. Again, it depends on how hard you're riding the thing, man. But that's kind of what I've seen at this point. S&S cam plate and oil pump worth a change on a twin cam. Depends on the mileage. Depends on several things, the build, what you got going on. There's no question that the aftermarket, whether it was S&S's or Fuelings, the old Delcron cam plates and all of that stuff, there's no question they were better and improved over the stock ones. How bad you need it? I don't know. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Yes, sir, it is. They play Jingle Bells and they have Christmas trees in it. And they do drink alcoholic eggnog. Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Tom asks, Marvel Mystery Oil, 2 ounces, yes or no? It depends. Are we talking in the fuel, or are we talking in the oil? Are we talking in an old bike, or whatever the case may be? If you're talking an old bike, they shovel earlier and you want to lubricate valve seats a little better, valve guides, that sort of thing, yeah, drop a little bit in there in the fuel. I actually do that on my old 49 GMC. As far as putting it in the fuel, it's really not necessary. If you want to do it every now and then, it's not bad, right? If you notice a little bit of tick, it could be a little bit of varnish in the valve guide to the valve. Maybe drop a couple ounces of oil in it to see if your tick goes away. If it does, it worked. If it doesn't, it may not be worth the trouble. Do you recommend HH-centered brake pads? Yes, those are great pads. No question. Let's see, Derek, thank you, sir. You are welcome. Replaced Train Guy 2020 Softail 107. Replaced the cat mufflers with V&H twin slashed stock air cleaner. Does it need a tune? Bike runs cooler and better mileage. If you remove the catalytic converter mufflers, I would highly recommend that you at least have the air-fuel ratio evaluated. Make sure you're not running too lean. You're going to get better mileage because you're running leaner. It's going to run cooler because you got rid of the cats. That doesn't mean the resulting air-fuel ratio is safe for the longevity of the engine. At least get it checked. Blue Angels 09, front brake chattering. You need to check the runout on your rotors. You can also pull the brake pads and chamfer the edges, the leading edge of the brake pads. That can help. Check your alignment of the rotor to your caliper itself. That's good things to check. I would probably look at that, and of course make sure the fasteners are tight and your springs in the caliper and all that stuff are good. Vance and Hines Torquer 450 is too big for stock M8. If your goal is really low to mid-range torque, man, so much of that is a matter of opinion and perspective. To me, I would say they're a little too big. That's my personal opinion. I think it would move the torque range a little bit higher from what I've experienced riding. So again, just my thought. Bridget, thoughts on oil crankcase breather caps for M8? Yes, do it. We've got that. Thanks for asking. Stinky, what is your favorite whiskey? Paul Chambers. I'm going to tell you guys a story real quick. How many viewers we got? I'm going to tell you a neat little story. Go find a podcast called In the Red Clay. It's called In the Red Clay. Listen to that podcast. It will tell you the story about the Dixie Mafia and how it was associated in Winder, Georgia. All right, when you hear that podcast, it's a 12-part series. It's kind of long. Anyway, that said, there's a whiskey distillery in downtown Winder that goes along with that story. I love that whiskey. That's really good whiskey. However, Knob Creek is one of my favorite. Woodward Reserve is a really good one. And Eagle Rare is a really great scotch. Those are some of my favorites. Thanks for asking, Paul. Let's see. Sizzle, we answered that question before. I'm not ignoring you, sir, but we jumped on it. Joe, one of our members, 2020 oil pump cam played okay, or upgrade them when doing a cam. It's still, still seen issues with it. I'm going to be honest, my friend. Everyone thinks the 2020 oil pump has been the solution to the problem. It has greatly reduced the issue, but it's still not a 100% solution. Hint all the stuff about sumping I talked about in my little wink wink. M8 compensator limits, I'm still going to be in that 130 horse and torque range. If you're an aggressive rider, 130, 140, I would definitely probably get rid of that stock compensator absolutely. Steven, after we break in my motor, what steadfastly are we going to? Man, you're going to have to tell me what you mean by that. Maybe I'm missing something. Steadfast are we going to? I'm not sure, but we'll figure it out. I'm sure we're going somewhere. Greg, thanks much. You are welcome, sir. All right. Leland, love the videos. Thanks so much. You're welcome, sir. Here we go. Speed round. Let's nail it, guys. And then, well, that is unless Joe Exotic asks me another question and throws me off and makes me laugh. But I enjoy laugh every now and then. TCB82, FYI, I have a 2017 M8 107 over 32,000 miles, no problem. Just upgrading fuel and cam plate and oil pump delivers at 468. Great riding pleasure from now on. Enjoy it, TCB82. Enjoy it. Keep an eye on, if you hear any weird noises at startup or anything like that, could be piston slap, could be on the way to the cylinder skirt breaking. So pay very close attention to that. As long as you don't have that issue, man, ride the heck out of it. Mike Petrosky, ding, ding. There's Mike Petrosky. Good to see you, my friend. Did you ever get heated hand grips? I'm wondering about that. John Z, 96-inch, 48H, 200 cold crank, Van Stein staggered SNS air cleaner, power vision with target tune, feels flat at low end suggestions, exhaust. 200 pounds cold is cold cranking pressure. That's a pretty good amount. Van Stein staggered, SNS air cleaner, power vision, target tune. Take a look at your tune on it. Take a look. Could be running a little lean, could be a little fat on the low end. That's not a huge power producing pipe, but and the 48H. Take a look at the intake close and the duration on your cam as well. Compare that to, say, like an SNS 510 or something similar along that range. You would want a short duration early intake close to really improve your low end torque. Maybe that'll help you. Josh DeFranco, 13 CVO, full sack headers and a good tune. Is that a good starting point for performance? Yes, sir. That's a good place to start. Good call, man. Train guy, you're welcome. Gary Indiana, thank you. Enjoy this amazing good info and good time with friends. Way better than the crap on TV with a skunk icon. Good man. Kevin, are you familiar with Woods McCooney carp? Yes, very much. Been messed with those for years. Let's see. Kevin, came familiar with Woods? Any Jeffrey, care any thoughts on the Ultra Cool cooler? Yes. I've been a Jag fan for many years. Haven't run a lot of the Ultra Cools. I've seen people run them. I haven't really heard anything bad. I've had a relationship with Jag for a very long time. Never had a defective issue. They've always done what they said they would do. If somebody wanted Ultra Cool, I'd certainly bolt it on their bike. Don't see any issues. In a previous video, you mentioned throttle bodies being too much for a build, and it was negatively affecting the curve on a bike. When is too much air intake? There is actually a formula for that. Much of that depends on your riding style, desired RPM, operating range, gear ratio. Man, there is so many factors. But I'm going to give you a general rule of thumb. Understand that there's other factors that come into play. All right? For ideal tuning and ideal low to mid-range torque, ideal throttle response and ease of tune, that's what we're talking about now. I don't care about a peak horsepower number. So let me caveat that with this. If you're building, say, a 95 or a 98 inch motor, a 44 to 46 millimeter. If you're doing a 107, a 46, 48 is pretty good. When you start getting into 113, 117, 120, a 50 millimeter is great. You start getting into 124, 128, 58, 55, 58, 62, depends on the power range of the engine. But that's a really good guide. Don't take it as gospel, man, because there's a lot of factors. But that at least helps answer your question. Let's see, 120 mile per hour tank slapper. What do you do? Lone Wolf, that's a tough one to answer, bud. I've heard some people say they've gotten out of it by throttling into it. I've heard some people say, I would think front brakes, it's over, which tends to be what people do. I've heard some people say they got out of one by, hitting the rear brakes. Man, that's a tough one. I would be afraid to answer that one, but I would say most people that I've talked to that said they had one, they were able to get out of it by throttling into it, but I'm not recommending that by any means. That's just, disclaimers and all that stuff. I don't know. That's probably what I would do. Reinhardt DBX 450, good or no good? It's good. It's a good pipe. It's a little large. Depends on where you want your power range to be. But if you're planning on building something later, then it would be suitable. TCB82, Dixie Mafia, they were in Biloxi, Mississippi yesterday. They blanketed the South. The lead hitman for the Dixie Mafia lived right here in Winder. It's quite a story. Joe Exotic, I'm Pickle Rick. Man, that's awesome. I hope you come to every live one, by the way, Joe Exotic. I still say Carol Baskin, she fed her husband to the Tigers. Carol Baskin fed her husband to the Tigers. I have no question in my mind. What's your opinion on radial brakes versus axial brakes? Radial brakes, axial brakes are awesome. Absolutely. More rigid, everything else. I think we've talked about that a lot. There, Mr. Val. Hope you're doing well, by the way, sir. Once again, a great live session. Learned a lot. Thanks. Keep it coming. Waiting for the Tech Tool series, which is going to be coming in a couple of weeks. Thanks to the folks at Jim's Machine and Tool. Thank you, sir. Love the Eagle Ware, Woodford Reserve, and Eli Craig. Very good, Mike. Thoughts on Vance and Hines QC last couple of years? I'm going to be honest, Patrick. I haven't recommended Vance and Hines to anyone in quite a long time because I saw those issues. I can't say that things have changed. I'm going to be honest with you because I haven't ordered them in a long time. So I just know what I saw before. And okay, let's stop. Preference on a cam for M8, the cam that's right for the rider, my friend. That takes a conversation for me to do that. Mike, you got your cams. Thank you very much, sir. Or excuse me, your grips. People asking about cams. Glad you got your grips. Michael Jones, whenever we go into that distillery, whenever you want to show up, sir, let's go and say hello to Mr. Stoney Burt. I will probably actually have one of his Bloody Marys. They're quite tasty. JC Cycles, what brand will be the best heated hand grips for an 03 Electra and Wide Glide? I can't answer that question, sir. I don't know. I don't install enough heated hand grips to be able to give you a valuable opinion. I know as a general rule, Harley's factory hand grips seem to have a pretty good service life on them. And then the ones from Kuryakin seem to have a pretty good service life too. But please don't consider me an authority on that because I don't install enough of them to tell you. I can tell you I also don't fix a lot of those too, either the stock Harley ones or the ones from Kuryakin. So I would maybe go from there. TCB82, you're welcome, sir. Ernest Knight, you're welcome. Thank you for complimenting the Chevelle video. Thank you very much. Thanks for the live tech. Make a Softail 04 into a hardtail without welding. Yeah, you can take the shocks out and put struts underneath it. Just pull the shocks, put two heim joints on either end. If yours is that style, put a threaded rod. Just make sure some heavy duty stuff, and put a spring seat on it or the gel seat because it's going to be quite a ride, my friend. NorCal refrigeration, chain drive versus belt drive. Depends on your right hand. Belt drive is a lot stronger than people think. If you're going to be, it's the belt adjustment being too loose and dumping a throttle, dumping the clutch on a loose belt is typically what snaps the belt, not necessarily under power, right? So if someone were to run more power on a belt drive, I tend to run that belt a little tighter than factory spec to make sure it doesn't get that snapping motion. But if you're going to ride aggressive and you're going to punch that sucker, chain drive, that would be the way to go. I've built 250 plus horsepower bikes on belt drive, and they survived, tens of thousands of miles. So that's depending on the rider. Let's see. If I want to discuss a C2 Corvette refresh plus a Road King power up, do I need to email Pete at protwin.com or Kevin at protwin.com? Because, man, Joe, I would love to do both of those. C2 model Corvettes. Oh man. Ghost Rider, I'm late to the chat. Bought a 2020 M8 RGS. Should I be scared? Sir, I'm going to be honest with you. All right. Harley Davidson builds a couple of, I think this last year they built 200 and something thousand motorcycles. I know they did like a 60%, reduction and all this other stuff. Don't get caught up in everybody screaming and yelling about all these problems with the M8. Yes, there are consistent problems. Yes, there have been issues. And understand that people come to me to get bikes fixed. They don't come to me because their bike runs great, right? So what you see from us are the problems. And I feel like my job is to communicate these known issues so you guys know what to look for, how to be, and how to repair them and get educated on these issues, right? It's not a very exciting video for me to stand next to a 2020 Harley and go, hey, this bike's awesome, right? So that being said, no, don't be terrified. Make sure you service the bike on a regular basis. And at least take the things that you find online, the common issues, the characteristics. Look at our video on sumping and what that feels like. Don't be terrified, man. Keep an eye, check your oil on a regular basis, check transmission fluid level on a regular basis. If you see oil levels doing crazy stuff or you feel it losing power, yeah, you fix it. You've got a warranty. They'll fix it, okay? So, no, I wouldn't be terrified, man. I think a lot of this stuff is... To be honest, a lot of this stuff is fear-mongering for the sake of selling parts, and I just don't like that, all right? So don't be terrified. Just pay attention to your bike. Learn it, what it feels like, and if anything changes and somebody tells you it's normal, if you hear noises you didn't hear before, if you feel less power than you had before, if you see the oil doing weird stuff, and you take it somewhere and they tell you that's normal, your bike is doing something different. Remember, you know your bike better than anybody else because you're the one that rides it. If it does something different, don't give up. Don't just be satisfied with that's normal. All right? Plug away at it until somebody finds a problem or somebody can explain to you what's going on, okay? So that's the best advice I can give you. From the heart, my friend. All right. Let's see. Everyone runs heated hand grips, so the Harley grips last the best. Mike, thank you. I kind of agree with that. Patrick Stevens, yep. You're blueprinting Super Soccer Man. You're blueprinting my 107 bottom end and doing RS 472, but curious what your personal favorite cams are and for what applications. That's a good choice. The 472 is a great choice. I really don't have a personal favorite. I can't do that. I recommend different cams from different manufacturers to different people all day long. I'm not loyal to a brand. I want what my customers need the most, and that's what I'll recommend. I don't care what my margins are. I'll sacrifice some margins to get somebody in the right cam or the right build. So I honestly can't answer that question. I've got a lot of them that are my favorites. I have a 2020 Heritage 107. It seems to be an excessive amount of engine vibration. Is it possible the counterbalance was improperly installed at the factory? Yes, it is possible. It's also possible you could have a sumping issue. Excessive, I would say, go to your dealer and ride 2 or 3 other bikes, 2 or 3 other new ones, and see if they're the same. If they tell you at the dealer it's normal, have them get on your bike, then ride the new bike, and then keep searching until you find your answer. Hence, the last video I did on engine noise with our customer Alan and all the stuff in his M8. Lesson learned on that one, right? All right, guys. Steven Richardson, gotta run. See you, my friend. Thanks for coming. My friends, it is 7:30. I'm going to answer these last couple of questions, guys, and I'm losing my voice. I'm going to be honest, I'm tired. It's been crazy. I'm just worn out. So, Jim Vella, one of our members, what would cause water in an oil catch can breather system? That is completely normal. I also wouldn't be surprised if you open up a drain plug or something and you see, just a brown, milky looking oil in there. What that is the system evacuating condensation. That is a good thing. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. So no surprise. It's condensation inside the crankcase. That is why it is so important when you store a motorcycle. People think if you go out and crank it, let it run for 10 or 15 minutes and you shut it off and you crank it up and you shut it off and that's good. That's actually terrible for it because that builds up condensation inside the engine. All right. So it's better if you crank one up, ride it. Otherwise, don't crank it. It's completely normal. Let's see. A lot of people like the Heat Demons heated grips here in Wisconsin. I've heard about those. They seem to work pretty well. If I want to do a fuel injection to carb conversion, would it be worth it and viable? Depends on the bike. If you're converting to a carb, you got to buy ignition, wiring harnesses, stuff like that. It depends. I personally, I would tune the fuel injection properly. If you want to do a carb conversion, it can cost upwards of $1,500, $2,000 to do it. That's really up to you, sir. I probably wouldn't make that change. Chad, thanks for great videos. You're welcome, from Minnesota. Actually, I hope to be in Minnesota here very soon at the, they haven't officially announced a date yet, at Donnie Smith's bike and car show. And so I hope to be in St. Paul for Donnie Smith's show. Chad, if you think you may go to that, then connect with me and maybe we can shake hands. Jim, thanks. You're welcome. All right, guys, it's time. It's time to say goodbye and good night. I'm going to give room for one last question, and then we're going to call it a night, guys. Michael Jones, you're welcome, my friend. Thank you very much. And actually, I've got one sip of my SAE 30 left right here. Any other questions? Bodine, greetings from Roanoke, Virginia. Great show. Guys, thanks a million. Thank you very much. We've had a lot of viewers in here hanging out with us for the past hour and a half. You guys are awesome. Thanks to all of our channel members. Thanks to all of you for hanging in there and asking questions and being engaged. It means a great deal. If you don't mind, do me a favor and help me get this channel to 2 million views, 30,000 subs by the end of the month. Enter that contest, like and share, get your friends to subscribe and do all that. I'm going to give away a cam plate, the oil pump, and all that. If you are interested in the bike build-off for the All Kids Bike Program on March 20th, the link is in the description for all of this stuff. And get your tickets and come and join us. We're limited. I've got about 50 to 60. I think I got about 50 tickets left to come to that. Big thanks to JR from a clock back there. And y'all get ready, get buckled in, because here before too long, we're going to start our Tool Tech series with Jim's Tools. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Guys, thanks a million. I'm signing off. Y'all have a great night. And don't forget, Google search Bob McKay, McKay Cycle Creations, and have a look at the history and the impact that man made on this industry. He was quite a fella, and I miss him dearly. All right, guys, y'all have a great night. Take care of yourselves and each other. As always, I appreciate you.